Hello! Today we are doing a classic booktube video where I'm actually going to film two. You're seeing one now. You'll see one next week, where I react to 5-star ratings on Goodreads of books that I gave 1 star to. And then next week we'll do me reacting to 1-star reviews of 5-star books for me. So I actually feel like that one's gonna be more just like me being like, okay, sure, like I get it. Not every book works for everyone. Cause like I tend to be pretty laissez-faire if people hate books that I love. Like it may hurt my feelings a little bit, but I mean, whatever. Like, I very much subscribe to the Judge John Hodgman rule of thumb, which is people like what they like. You cannot talk someone into liking something that they just don't like. So that one I think will be a little bit more easy breezy. This one, I don't know how it will go, but I will say I've picked 3 books that I think I have a very hard time picturing who loves these books. So I don't know, we'll get into it. I thought today I would pick probably my least favorite book that I've read since joining BookTube. We would pick my all-time least favorite book and then my least favorite book from my favorite author. So we'll start with the least favorite book I've read since joining BookTube. I would say that would have to be Winter at Death's Hotel. I'm looking it up here on Goodreads. The reason that I hate this book, well, let me even try to cast my mind back here. This book is a historical mystery, and the protagonist is the wife of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. They are visiting New York, and a serial murderer is afoot. This is a premise that I am all about. Like, everything about that description is something I should love. The problems I had with this book were I don't know this for a fact, but my perception of the author's misogyny in the text. The writing, which I felt like was neither fish nor fowl. Like, I thought it was neither like beautifully written and sort of evoking the historical setting through creating some sort of verisimilitude in the prose, nor was it just like sort of straight down the line, window pane, clear prose that just was easy to read. I thought he was trying to go for a fancier style and basically just like not successful, and just thought that the whole thing was kind of like a chore to get through. So I very much did not enjoy that. I actually have a vlog of that. That's one of the first reading vlogs I ever did. And I think like that was other creators will know this. You have videos where like you learn something about how to make videos. And I look at that one and think I learned a lot from that process. But anyway, so we're gonna find okay, there's only 100 reviews. So there may not be that many 5-star ones, but let's get going here. Okay, so the first one I see says, I did love this book. The story, the characters, and the setting were well drawn and very powerful. Okay, I think I've already established I very much disagree with that. The heroine, Louisa, is the wife of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who is left behind in a hotel. Okay, so she's kind of rehashing what the plot is. Louisa is a multifaceted and truly heroic character. Kenneth Cameron did a fabulous job of writing a woman. Ma'am, you and I both know that this woman looked herself in the mirror naked multiple times and commented on her nipples. Are you telling me that that is something that you do all the time? Because I know that I, after a long day, do not come home and do that. Like, okay, I'm just gonna have to say I very much disagree as a fellow woman that he did a fabulous job of writing a woman. Okay, the struggles of women of that time and capturing the struggle of a curious and agile mind against struggling against constraints. Okay, I'm gonna say, I think what maybe she's getting at here, which is that I do think he was trying to show the misogyny of the time. Like, or let me rephrase that. I think he was trying to show the kind of paternalism that women experienced in most of their relationships in this time period. However, I think that he was trying to show that, but in doing that, I didn't feel like he was successful in actually undercutting it. I felt like he was actually feeding into that paternalism rather than undermining it in the way that the story, it really in sort of the authorial posture I felt in the narrative. I didn't feel like he actually had a problem with some of the things he was portraying, but I get her point that I suspect he was trying to do that. Like, this is what I assume people of color experience when they're reading books, where clearly a white author is trying to show some part of the experience of being a person of color, and like that's their intention, but they haven't really like done the work or had like the beta readers to help them really like get all the way there. That's how I felt about this portrayal of womanhood in this period. I did not find the gruesome aspects of the story beyond the pale. That's True, they were grisly, but certainly deserved to be exposed rather than comfortably glossed over. Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with that. My dominant complaint is that the story absolutely needed and deserved one more chapter. Okay, she is 100% right, because the way that this ends is incredibly anticlimactic and unsatisfying, both as a mystery, but also as sort of like, if this was meant to just be sort of historical fiction or like literary fiction, it's I think meant to be sort of this ambiguous, like, profound ending, and it's just so unsatisfying on both ends of the spectrum. So she's definitely right about that. The ending was very unsatisfying, a bit unresolved, and deserves some closure. I wanted to observe more of the fallout of the hotel, our killer, Doyle's return. Okay. By leaving this off as he did, I felt that the ending was not very validating from and for a feminist perspective. Okay, so this is interesting that she has this insight, but then also thinks that he's portraying women in some sort of profound way. Oh, okay, so it looks like originally she didn't give this 4-star or 5 stars. Louisa deserved her due. Were there another chapter, I would have gladly given it 5 stars. Days later, I'm still thinking about this book and have decided to give it another half-star. Louisa deserved it. Okay, well, Louisa deserved it, but the book did not, so that was interesting. The next one mostly is just a plot recap, but the ending says, the ending of the review mentions, I very much enjoyed the book and had to remind myself where the things that Louisa had to put up with were more because of the time period of the setting, no money of her own, etc. Again, this gets into, I think maybe some readers found that portrayal more successful than I did in terms of him accurately portraying the time period, and I guess some people felt like he was doing a successful job of undercutting it, whereas I personally did not have that experience. Okay, and then it looks like most of the other ones that I'm seeing are all just kind of talking about that same idea of, it seems that there are some people who just basically found this to be more successful than I did in terms of its portrayal of the time period. They liked the murder mystery better than I did. So I don't really have a lot more to say about these. I do see this one that's saying, it was also fun to read because women of the 1800s were to be much like the children, seen but not heard. No opinions, no money of their own, total dependence on their man. Not in this book. Okay. I would have liked to read that too. I guess we had very different reading experiences. Okay, the next book we're going to talk about is The Magicians, and I just came to my Goodreads page and I realized that for some reason I have this ranked as 2 stars, which I don't know how that happened, so I'm fixing that. I just put it to 1. Okay, things I hate about The Magicians. So many. I am very infuriated by what I see as the authors basically ripping off of a lot of things in other books, specifically the Chronicles of Narnia, but not doing it in a way that I thought was actually interesting or clever. It felt derivative. And then in addition, he's clearly like kind of sneering at the philosophical implications of Chronicles of Narnia, which like we're all allowed to have whatever opinions about that stuff that we want to, but I don't think he actually ever does a good job of it. Like Philip Pullman, for example, I think clearly in The Golden Compass and those books, he's also critiquing that worldview, but he's doing it, I think, from like a valid artistic place, whereas I don't think Lev Grossman achieves anything like as successful a fantasy as what the Chronicles of Narnia is, and yet is very self-satisfied and smug about his own work and about, like, I just basically, that whole element really I found off-putting. I think that there's an act of sexual violence in this that I don't think is sufficiently addressed, and that bothers me. And just generally, this is sold as Harry Potter, but for adults. And I just think that's just, like, wrong. I just feel like he's trying to be an edgelord in this book, and it's not. It felt very emo, incomplete, in my opinion. A lot of people say that the series gets better, and I've heard a lot of people say, like, okay, yeah, I know the first book isn't the best, but, like, if you keep going, and I'm like, no. If the first book is that bad, it doesn't deserve it. This book induces the most rage in me of any book I've ever read, so that is why I thought this would be a good one for this project. So, and actually I'm looking, and I see a lot of my friends also have rated this very low. So there you go. Maybe if you're of similar mind to me, this is just not a good one. Okay, well, the first 5 stars from Mark Lawrence. Okay, let's come to this next one. I'm going to mention that all of the top reviews are from men, so I just say that because I do think men often, I think, find the kind of edgelord performance a little bit more appealing than women do. That's just a generalization, observation from life. Do with that what you will. Okay, so this first one is basically, okay, we get a little plot summary about Quentin. Okay, can I also just tell you, it says Quentin Coldwater is an unhappy teen. That also dialed the other thing. I'm usually, I think if you watch this channel, you know, I'm down with an unlikable character. Like, I don't have to think everybody I'm reading about is best person ever. So that's not my issue. Quentin is so unlikable that, like, I resented being made to spend time with him. And that to me is the line that is harder for me to make my peace with. I just actively wasn't enjoying spending time in his point of view. So that was my other big thing. So, okay, so it's giving a little summary. It says, first of all, this isn't Harry Potter for adults, no matter how much people want to slap that label on it. I do agree with that. Although if you expand that label to Harry Potter for cynical adults who've read Harry Potter and don't think it's the greatest series ever written, it would be more accurate. Okay, again, I mean, there's like a boarding school aspect, but it's college. It's not boarding school. These are adults, and like, I don't know. I just don't think Harry Potter is the right comparison for this series, even though that seems to be the most popular one. It has a superficial resemblance to Harry Potter in that both books involve learning to be a wizard, and that's about it. Part of it reminds me of Stephen King's The Talisman. Okay, I've not read that, so I don't know, while the other part reminded me of The Wizard of Earthsea. The magic reminds me of Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. Okay, I mean, I appreciate that this person is like got a lot of references that they're bringing to their review. It seems like this review is basically just saying that they like how much they basically are just into the project of this book. So there we go. I can't really argue with that. You like what you like. If you like the project of the book, then like, fair enough. Another thing that he's saying he likes is that the actual magic system is not fake Latin and waving wands around. It's taxing and has consequences, and learning it is extremely difficult. Yeah, I think that that's a trend that we've seen since The Magicians, more that there seems to be more of these books and fantasy where people actually really have to like put in the time and sweat equity to learn the magic. So I can get on board with that. That's fine. Yeah, okay, so I appreciate, he brought some interesting references here. This seems to be just a situation of like, he liked the project of this book and liked the execution, whereas I did not. The next one also is speaking to edgelord, the appeal of the edgelord. Because it starts with, I passed on reading this book when it first came out because I was underwhelmed by the author's first book, Codex. It was the excessively negative reviews about The Magicians piqued my interest. The complaints these reviewers had actually made me want to read the book, which I hear that. There's sometimes where you hear people saying like, oh, if somebody were to say, I hated that book because it was too much of a whodunit and they were all trapped together and I wanted to see a bigger setting, I'd be like, well, girl, that's my catnip, so give that to me. So, I mean, okay, fair. But it does kind of play into my theory here of a lot of people who like these books just think they're very edgy. Unfortunately, this book was marketed as an adult book for Harry Potter fans. There's some truth to the marketing scheme, but too many people who are ardent Harry Potter fans are not the proper readership for this book. I guess I agree with that, but there's a little bit of condescension here that I don't love. Okay, and then he's talking about how much he likes this particular scene. It's actually one of the scenes I personally like the least. And then he's also talks about the meta element of this, where Grossman actually does refer to other fantasy worlds, including Harry Potter. I guess he liked those meta elements. I personally, like I was talking about at the beginning, did not enjoy the allusions to other works because I found them to be showing that he wasn't actually really adding anything to what those previous works had done. He was just sort of being like really cynical and edgy with them in a way that just didn't appeal to me. And then he also says, I suppose there is sex and copious alcohol consumption, although not flagrantly so. Reviewers have made comparison to Bret Easton Ellis. I will say that all the sex was in the context of the plot, and even some gave the plot a proper nudge. Okay, so he's saying that he agrees with comparisons to Donna Tartt, which, again, I guess I can see where those comparisons would come from. I just don't agree with them. And then again, he says, if you're looking for Harry Potter, but an adult Harry Potter, you should give this a pass. So, like, again, I don't disagree with that. I think what I'm seeing in these reviews, and even just scrolling through this, a lot of them are dudes. A lot of them are just saying, like, I liked how different and edgy this was. I'm seeing a lot of shout outs to how much people liked Quentin. So, I mean, I guess I can't really, like, I can't argue with that. Again, you like what you like. I guess this is just sort of a matter of taste. And the things that I found really distasteful in this book don't bother everyone. And that's just, a fact of life. Different people have different things that bother them. So we'll just move on from there because I think these seem to be pretty samey in a lot of their takes. And then finally, I thought we could end with Passenger to Frankfurt, since that is my least favorite Agatha Christie. And I love the author. It's not that I have a problem with the author. This book is just really bad, in my opinion. The writing is not up to Christie standards. The plot is a spy thriller plot, which at the best of times with Christie are a little bit of nonsense, but in this particular book is so much nonsense that it beggars belief. It's like nonsensical, in my opinion. Like, there's moments of Christie's writing that still poke through, but in general, it doesn't have any of her like real life that her books tend to have. So I'm very curious to see what these 5-star reviews are. I'm wondering if they're going to be a bunch of like kind of hardcore fans who just can't bring themselves to say that this book is bad, or maybe it's people who've never read a Christie before and there's enough of her spark in there that it's intriguing them. Like, I'll be interested to see this. Okay, so the one I see just says, I can't not give this 5 stars. It was definitely one of the most puzzling books I've ever read, but I loved every minute. A riot of fabulous characters, though that's expected with Agatha Christie. Wow, okay. Puzzling in the sense of nonsensical, I agree with. A riot of fabulous characters. I mean, the characters are so... ugh. Like, I guess I just really don't see that. I see another one that says this is one of their top 10 favorite Agatha Christie. So again, somebody who's read a good number of the books, and what starts as a random meet cute ends with intrigue, politics, travel, strange companions, and a vast amount of nonsense. Okay, so she's even agreeing that it's nonsense. She just likes it, I guess. Just great book. Okay. Different than her usual books, will probably be one of my favorites of hers. Another reread. I had totally forgotten the plot and was pleasantly surprised at how deep this was. Intriguing story, but not the usual Christie plot. Okay, so I'm seeing a few people talking about this being just different for her. So maybe that's the appeal, is that it's just a little bit different than some of her other books. It is, I would argue, in a really negative way. It is different than a lot of her books. A very interesting cautionary tale on the order of Brave New World in 1984. Wow, that is a generous take. Christie demonstrates her insight and range as a writer in this futuristic political thriller. Very timely now in the age of terrorism and rampant political incompetence and corruption. Whoa, okay. Again, like, I guess I just have to give them snaps for finding that in this book. I think that's just a real generous take. Amazing read kept me locked. Wow. That was not my experience. This is one of the Christie books I probably had the hardest time getting through. It was a real struggle. I never knew she'd written spy novels too. Okay, so maybe this is one of his first encounters with her spy stuff. So maybe that was the appeal. It's not an easy book. Good insights here given on politics and social changes across the world that was happening those years. But believe me, there is a mention of patterns here. There's always a pattern to see in big changes in the world, also evident in the post-2010 era. Okay, so I'm seeing in a lot of these 5-star reviews, people talking about it's something different. They found the plot really intriguing, that they liked her version of a spy novel. So I guess maybe if you'd never read one of the other ones from her, maybe. But yeah, I'm kind of blown away. Just like, I just can't imagine a world in which that's a 5-star book, but clearly these people are living in that world. So what did we learn today? I think one of the interesting things I saw in all 3 of the reviews for these books is several times people are calling out things that I also called out, but they are mentioning them as something that they liked versus I am talking about it as something I didn't like. And that goes to show, I mean, I often comment, because, you know, whenever I review books, inevitably there are some people who say, oh, I hated that book that you loved, or oh, I love that book that you hated, whatever. Often, like, if I don't have a specific real response to someone, I'll just kind of say like, hey, you know, there's a reader for every book and a book for every reader, because that's like, I really believe that. Like, I think most books have an audience, even if it's not me. And sometimes I am one of the only people in the audience for a book. That's just kind of the nature of like subjective human taste. And yeah, I guess that proves that out. Some of these, I would say my strongest disagreements are on Winter at Death's Hotel in terms of people thinking that was like a great insight into womanhood. But, you know, again, maybe that was their experience of womanhood and it's just been very different than mine. So yeah, so that's my reaction to 5-star ratings of 1-star books for me. And like I said, next week we will do the opposite. So stay tuned for that. Let me know if you've read any of these books, what you thought of them, and what you thought of any of these reviews. Definitely let me know that in the comments below. But yeah, I think that will do it for this video. So if you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, follow me on the social medias if you are so inclined. I have all that information information listed in the description box below, along with a link to register to vote. And it is probably too late to register to vote for this election. You should definitely still register for future elections. But if you have already registered, make sure that you have made a plan to vote, get it on the calendar, get your plan going. I will see you at the polls. And yeah, I hope you guys are having an absolutely lovely day today, and I will just talk to you soon. Bye!